Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, and we'll go for it. Hi, so my name's Kim, as our wonderful host said, and I'm here to talk about redefining what net zero means when we talk about community-wide building codes. So, why are we talking about net zero building codes? Well, it's because communities across the state have had goals or have goals in their community climate action plans that try to move their community towards net zero building codes. And so the question has come up in working with these communities, what does that mean? And why do we need net zero building codes? Well, we're in this big, massive effort to reduce carbon emissions across the state, and yet we keep building new infrastructure that emits carbon, right? So how do we stop the boat from sinking if we don't plug the hole? And the traditional definition of net zero is we produce everything that we consume. And I'm going to explain why that doesn't necessarily fit the Colorado equation anymore. The biggest reason being, in the state of Colorado, we have all of these clean power plants, whether they're required by the PUC or whether they're voluntary commitments to renewable energy. In the next 20 or so years, we expect the Colorado electric grid to be running mostly on renewable electricity. And so a net zero code no longer means you have to produce everything you want to consume on site. Now it means we need to use all the tools in our toolbox to figure out how we get to zero carbon. And so that includes all of these different items, and each community is going to be unique in how they pursue these different items. We have renewable energy and energy efficiency. They help us get to that decarbonized grid. We have electrification that helps us take advantage of a decarbonized grid. And then we have demand flexibility and energy storage, which are the keys to making sure an all-electric grid actually works, right? And so the end goal of a net zero code is really to have very efficient buildings that run on renewable energy, that don't have fossil gas in them, and that have the ability to shift their loads to accommodate a clean grid. And the cool thing is there's tons of communities in the state already putting in place these various elements of net zero codes. We have solar ready and solar required in communities across the state. Energy efficiency, and as far as building codes, the sort of newest trend is looking at performance-based standards for energy efficiency to make sure that these buildings are actually performing the way that they should. And then the next biggest one, I think, really, really important is electrification. And electric readiness is that standard that will be required in new building codes per the new state law that passed last year. So starting in July this year, all new building codes will have to have an electric ready standard. And we have the first all-electric building code in the state, which is really exciting. And as far as these final two, utilities have really been the ones leading the way on demand flexibility and energy storage. There aren't really code elements adopted for those things yet. I'm going to give a quick plug to my local utility, Holy Cross Energy, who is one of the most progressive utilities in the state, and they are taking a lot of advantage of demand flexibility and energy storage to help get to that renewable content on their grid. And these elements all have various benefits. As you guys all probably know, renewable energy helps lower our energy bills. It gives us that carbon-free electricity. Energy efficiency guarantees performance, lowers energy bills, lower energy bills across the board. But the impact I want to focus on is on electrification. And our wonderful Lotus team who's here tonight helped put together these energy models. And this looks at the column on the far side there, looks at a building in a 40-year lifespan that's built all electric versus one that's built with natural gas, the one over here. And so you can see the emissions over the next 30 years built in the Holy Cross territory, where we expect to have a 100% renewable grid by 2030, is amazingly impactful, right? If we want to reduce emissions, net zero codes, elements of net zero codes are the things that we need to consider. And that happens for single family homes, multifamily buildings, and commercial buildings. So the key takeaways of, here we are, that net zero needs a little bit of redefining in a state as progressive as Colorado. Communities can pick from the toolbox on what works the best for them, and net zero code elements aren't new. And so these code language and example codes are out there for communities to adopt and consider right now. So if you want to help get some of these net zero codes in place, go tell your elected leaders you want to see more electrification or demand response in your code. When you're updating your home or business, make sure that you're thinking about these different elements and how your home can contribute to them. And I missed the last one because it flipped. So hopefully you read it. But thank you guys.